Ladies and gentlemen, we are closing in on the second round of the 2024 NBA playoffs, about to start the conference finals. And friend of the show, Swish Out, uploaded this video called Everything the 2024 NBA playoffs has proven us so far. Links to this video will be in the description as always. And let's get it popping.
Do you feel like you guys have tried everything? I mean, there's been load managing in the past, and this season you guys were like, hey, we're going to take it more seriously, and we're going to play every game in condition, and you guys did that until the guys got hurt, and it's kind of like the same result. You guys just can't stay healthy in the postseason. Does it feel like you guys have tried everything?
Yeah.
I know we've talked about it a lot, but it is one of the biggest trades of our era. But officially 5 years later, that Thunder Clippers trade is one of the biggest fleece of the.
I ain't gonna lie, I was looking at this graphic and I'm like, what else did LA get? They really did just get Paul George. They really did just get Paul George. I'm looking at this, bro. What these picks ended up being, just take everything away. Let's just say this ended up being SGA and 2022 unprotected first rounder that ended up being J-Dub. Ooh.
Decade and possibly ever. Now, obviously, context matters. You can't just look at that trade technically because Paul George basically got traded solely for one of the best rebuilds that I've ever seen. But we know it wasn't just Paul George. Kawhi was basically involved in this package because I don't think he goes to the Clippers if this trade doesn't fall through. But 5 years later, I'm sorry. It's an absolute disaster. And what makes it worse is the current success of now OKC. Right now.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. The Paul George trade and how we grade it is definitely based off of hindsight and the outcome, which I understand if you feel like that's the right way to go about things, that's fine. But I just feel like if they did win a championship, that trade would have been an A+S. You know what I'm saying? Because it made sense during the time. No one was complaining when the Clippers got Paul George because it also meant that they got Kawhi. And they're about to start this new era, new regime of Clipper basketball that's supposed to be championship contenders every single year. But I'm looking at this trade, just the trade alone, and I'm looking at how the Clippers have played out over the last couple of years, and I'm going to keep it a stack. While Paul George hasn't been perfect, he has not been perfect, the main culprit to me is Kawhi. So to blame... Like, I'm looking at this trade, and I feel like the Clippers did their job. To me, to build a championship contender the way they wanted to, they did their job, for better or for worse. Again, was the front office perfect? No, absolutely not. But to me, the reason why this team keeps on failing every single year is because their best player, who they built their franchise around, who they gave all these assets for to build around, all of these, was not there by the end of the season. And I understand, as we said it in 2024, would the LA Clippers love to have J-Dub and SGA? Absolutely. But that's a hindsight in 2020 situation. Because would SGA have been ready to step up the way Paul George has been able to step up these last 5 years? I don't think so. Up until last season. And I would also wonder if SGA develops into the player that he's become in LA, which I personally don't think he does. But nevertheless.
Now, as I record this video, OKC is tied 2 games apiece with Dallas, the team that the Clippers just got sent home by. Yes, it was no Kawhi, but it's never any Kawhi. That's a given. If OKC happens to beat Dallas, which I'm not predicting, I picked Dallas to win that series and they should have won game 4. But if OKC wins, not only did they advance against a team that might have just broken up your 5-year experiment, they would have made it just as far as the Clippers did with that Jordan-Pippen 2.0 duo, even through a 5-year rebuild. That's insane. I remember this article by Forbes right after the Clippers blew that 3-1 lead against the Nuggets in the bubble, and it basically talked about how that massive trade can actually resemble another one of the worst trades of the decade, the Brooklyn Celtics trade. Yeah, you might look at it and say, nah, no way. Kawhi and Paul George, they were way younger at the time. The trade made way more sense, and they made a conference finals, slightly more success. But to me, it's really becoming a stalled out version of that Brooklyn debacle 10 years ago. And who cares if you maintain relevancy that always ended up in massive disappointment? If you celebrate that, that's the most Clippers thing ever. Brooklyn went all in, had a bunch of names for 1 year, whereas the Clippers did it for 5. But the results are damn near identical. Both trades resulted in the team that basically fleeced them, kicking off some of the greatest rebuilds of our era. And that's
I still would. I get the comparison between the Nets and the Clippers. I get the angle that, like, at the end of the day, the motherfuckers did not win. But I feel like we would have to look back at every trade that was for winning now, for winning in the close future, as opposed to setting up the future. And if that team didn't win, then that's another net situation. I disagree. They got 5 years out of it. They got Kawhi after he just won a Finals MVP. You know what I'm saying? They got Paul George after he just won, not one, but after he was top 3 in MVP and DPOY. They got prime Paul George. I'm gonna keep it a stack. On top of having Doc Rivers, on top of having Pat Bev, on top of having Lou Will, Montrezl Harrell, and the crew. Like, they had some pieces, dog. I can't. And it made sense. It made much more sense. The league was wide open to me. There wasn't a 2013 Heat looming around, 2014 Heat looming around the league. Like, nah, the league was wide open when they built that team. It's just, it didn't work out.
Simply a fact. 4 years post the Boston trade, Boston was the first seed in their conference. 5 years post the OKC trade, OKC is the first seed in their conference. Now, the Clippers, they're stuck with the 34-year-old Paul George, who's probably about to opt out of his contract. A bad contract with Kawhi. I love Kawhi, but that's a bad contract, and I have no idea why they did that early. And no real results from this hopeful duo, but disappointment and flash in the pan ass moments. And Paul George, he's right. They tried everything. When Kawhi and PG first got there, they were heavy on the load management stuff because Kawhi was fresh off of that method with Toronto. That didn't work. And the only time we seen Kawhi healthy through a full playoffs was in a bubble off a 4-month layoff. That's not real. This year they played more than ever and they had great moments, but it ended with their best player not being there when you needed him most. This stuff, it just didn't work. The window, to me, to really maximize the dominance of LeBron and Anthony Davis
but before I move on to the LA, I also feel like I think we need to understand how hard it is to truly win a championship, especially in 2024. How hard it is to truly win a championship. A regular season is 82 games long. You know what I'm saying? There are 30 teams in the league. There's 8 teams in a conference fighting for a championship once you get into the playoffs. Every single round is 7 games, and you got to win 4 games. There's 16 games in the playoffs that you got to win before anyone else to win a championship. Injuries are a thing. Luck is a thing. Luck is a factor in all of this. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes, like, the cards just don't fall in your favor, because I don't think Kawhi is sitting there trying to be injured. Same thing with Paul George. Sometimes the game plan that you thought, in an ideal sense, it would work out. There's pros and cons. You play the probabilities of everything. It's just the probabilities didn't land in your favor. You know what I'm saying? And I'm looking at these last 5 years for the Clippers, especially in the fact that they're in the Western Conference, and it's tough. It's tough, bro. It's tough because I'm looking at everything they did in that 2019 season, and I'm telling you it made sense. I'm telling you it made sense to me and to a lot of people.
The duo, bro, that's over. Not to hone in or trash Russell Westbrook in any way, but that Russ trade for the Lakers, it always frustrated me because it ruined prime years of what could have been with that duo. Now, AD couldn't stay healthy through those years, so we probably wouldn't have been able to see it anyway. But when they won that championship in 2020, it was such a hand-in-glove fit with the right pieces surrounding them. As great of a passer LeBron has always been, he averages 10 assists and leads the NBA in assists their first year together. Anthony Davis has an absolute dominant postseason run. They won a championship. It just felt perfect. Even the following season, fresh off the shortest offseason ever for a champion, they were in prime position to, who knows, win it again before injuries derailed their year. But unfortunately for them, the West since then, it's completely changed. Their first 2 to 3 years together, in my opinion, was their window to win, mainly because of how significantly weaker the West was at that time. In their first year together where they won that championship, the Lakers had the best record in the West, by far the best point differential in the West, and not trying to take away anything they accomplished in that season. But
are we really about to sit here and make an argument that the West was weaker in the two? I don't think that was ever the case. To the point where we're making this case right here, I don't think the West was ever so weak to the point where we can look back and say, man, the West is so strong right now. You should have took advantage of it in 2020. Like, the teams in the West in 20, like, let's look back. Let's look back, because maybe I'm forgetting some names. And while I will say, like, the 8th seed now, the 9th seed now is probably tougher than even just 4 years ago, maybe that I still need to double check. Like, in 2020, like, the Blazers, do y'all remember the conversations about the Blazers being this scary ass 8th seed with Bubble Dame going into that series? Like, I remember that. The Dallas Mavericks had Luka. They the Clippers got pushed to 7 in round 1. The Jazz, y'all remember Bubble D Mitch? I know we talk about Bubble Murray more than Bubble D Mitch, but bro, Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs was on some nasty timing. And then the Rockets had this was still, he wasn't 37 point per game James Harden, or 36, but this was still like 34 point per game James Harden, and Russell Westbrook had a resurgent year. And then this was the season where the Thunder had SGA, Dennis Schroeder, and Chris Paul putting in that work. Like, I don't know about that argument right there. Even in 2021, I'm looking at these teams. Nah, I wouldn't say that. I definitely wouldn't say that. I don't know.
if you remember that specific year, it was really a two-man race between the two LA teams. Dame was putting up heroic performances in dead-ass Portland. Houston, they had two ball hogs and their average height lineup was like 6'5". We knew that wouldn't work. Jokic and Murray, they were very young back then. The Jazz, their second best player was Rudy Gobert. Steph and Kevin Durant, they were out the conference. It was a perfect window for LeBron and Anthony Davis to capitalize, and they did for 1 year. Now, it's not like that. And you know it's not like that because LeBron and AD, they both had really good regular seasons. They both, to me, played well in the playoffs. Look at their numbers this year versus the year they won the championship. LeBron was averaging 10 points in the fourth quarter versus Denver in this series on high-ass efficiencies. I don't care that.
But I don't think this has nothing to do with, and maybe this is his point, with LeBron and AD. I truly think, or even the competition, I truly think this has to do way more with front office management, their head coaching situation, and the moves that they've done over these last 3-4 years. The Russell Westbrook trade, the lack of continuity with this team, firing Frank Vogel, bringing in Darvin Ham, then firing Darvin Ham. Like all of these trades. Also injuries again, that luck factor. And a little bit of LeBron and AD just not being the same player anymore. You know what I'm saying? But I truly do think, like, if the team was just built properly, they still would be fine.
That he missed one wide open shot in game 2 that probably could have changed the series. He played well. Anthony Davis averaged his career high in the playoffs in rebounds, assists, and field goal percentage. Could he have been more aggressive in the fourth quarter? Yeah, but I know what AD is, and you really couldn't ask for more out of your two best players. To me, they lost because they continued to allow Denver to go on these massive runs where they got extremely cold and Denver got extremely hot. Specifically, MPJ. If you look at the first halves of the first round, the Lakers damn near led the playoffs in point differential with a plus 38. They lost because, well, in the second half, they were damn near at the bottom with a minus 49 plus differential. I believe in all of their losses, they had like a 12-point plus lead. They led the series for like 70% of the time. They weren't outmatched. They just couldn't finish. And going back to LeBron and Anthony Davis, to me, they could have beaten any one of these Western Conference teams not named Denver. Minnesota definitely would have been tough, But I feel like LeBron, with his experience, he would have won the chess match with Anthony Edwards. The problem is they're in the West. We had 10 teams, 10 games above 500 for the first time ever. The Lakers, they don't get the benefit of having a good first, second round matchup because they're an older team that drags out the regular season and that hurts them. And the West is only getting better. Ja's back next year. Houston, they have another top pick. Wemby, he's insane. To me, that window is just closed, even with how good those two are. For them to win now, everything kind of has to be perfect. And it's never really been that way for LeBron.
I think we're also seeing now, too, that there's so much talent in the league that the difference between a top seed, a finals appearance worthy team, a championship winning team, is not just a talent thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we look at it from a talent perspective, the teams in the semifinals right now aren't necessarily the most talented teams. Or the gap between talent between the teams in the second round right now and the rest of the league, and some of the teams that have been eliminated, it's not like this huge ass gap. And I'm trying to find the bracket right now. Right? But what I am seeing, though, are teams that are, one, extremely well coached, and number two, have a lot, and I mean a lot, of continuity because they didn't rush the process and have been building something for 3, 4, 5 years at a time. That's what I'm seeing. I'm looking at the Thunder. They've had a slow and steady rebuild over the last 3, 4 years. I'm looking at the Dallas Mavericks. I'm looking at the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm looking at the Denver Nuggets. I'm looking at the Indiana Pacers, the New York Knicks, the Boston Celtics. You know what I'm saying? These are teams that valued coaching, that valued continuity, that valued building a culture over these other teams that, in my opinion, have been just trying to band-aid problems, find short solutions at the trade deadline, trying to rush the process too soon instead of building around guys properly and letting things develop out the way that they should. You know what I'm saying? I think the Suns, after the 2021 season that they had and how great that was, for them to essentially, in a matter of 2 seasons, build around a completely different player in Kevin Durant, I think that was a misstep. I didn't see the problem with building around D-Book, in my opinion. The Clippers, trading for James Harden. That's a big piece that you're trying to integrate to a team 8 games into the season. The Lakers, I don't even need to go about the Lakers with their coaching situation. I think, to me, the biggest thing with the Lakers is the coaching situation. And I understand we love an Austin Reeves. Now we love, I don't know about we love. I know Lakers fans don't like D'Lo. I know their trade deadline last season was really big for them, but nevertheless, this is still a core that's been together for a year and a half, a season and a half. That's not enough continuity to me. That's not enough continuity to me. And I can keep going on and on. You know, the Bucks and all their coaching mishaps this season. Teams need to be built properly now in 2024, dog. Because the league is so talented that talent, not only can it can only carry you so far, it cannot carry you to a championship. It just can't.
Miami Heat, they're a team that's, to me, in a pretty similar situation. As much success as they've had, they've peaked. You could tell Pat Riley in his interview last week, he was frustrated, taking jabs at their best player, Jimmy Butler, and calling Tyler Hero fragile. But to me, a lot of it, bro, is your fault. I respect the culture. Everybody respects Heat culture. It's obviously a proven thing that works. But Pat Riley specifically, he's relied way too much on culture in despite of talent.
I agree. And I understand I have my biases against Miami. But again, I respect the fuck out of y'all for overachieving these last 5 years. I do not think this franchise was supposed to go to 2 finals appearances. But again, and I know Pat Riley thinks this way too. You're not about to hang your hat on 2 finals appearances and losses. That's nothing to... It's impressive, don't get me wrong. But especially Pat Riley, the head coach of the Showtime Lakers, the motherfucker that orchestrated the Miami Heat Big Three, I know his eyes are set higher than just making it to the finals. I think Eric Spoelstra is doing his job to the best of his abilities. You know what I'm saying? To the point where I feel like a lot of us view him as the best coach in the league in 2024. Right? But you can only hang your hat off so much on 2 finals appearances that end in losses. And I'm going to keep it a stack. Every time you went to those finals, it was on some, oh my God, we're just happy to be here. Like, we're underdogs, but hey, at least we made it here type of finals runs. You know what I'm saying? And then for Pat Riley, we got to look at you. Because again, with all these coaching discussions that we have, the coach can only do so much with the players that he's given. So I'm looking at these last 5 years, and while you have found diamonds in the rough through Heat culture, every single year we have the same discussion of y'all didn't have enough talent at the top end. Y'all didn't.
I don't even get how you can be mad at Jimmy, even if you are a little annoyed with his comments, because you're the one that's failed him in his 5 years there, and he's maximized that opportunity. Bad contract after bad contract, deadline after deadline where you make no moves, free agency after free agency where you make no moves. Kyle Lowry at like 36 years old, he gets a massive deal, and it never worked out. Duncan Robinson, he's still owed $19 million next year. I know he had a bad back, and he is good for your spacing, but this year in the playoffs, he wasn't really there. Tyler Hero, he's taking up a lot of your cap, and I know he's young. He's only 24 years old, but he's injured a lot.
And maybe I just don't have a good grasp of Miami's salary cap situation, but for the market that Miami is, especially now, I ain't gonna lie, as a city, I don't think Miami was getting hyped up like this even 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But now they're in the same territories as LA and New York. But nevertheless, that's a whole different discussion. I feel like the lack of marquee moves going to Miami, and the only marquee move, let's keep it a stack, is a Jimmy Butler, who a lot of people was doubting when y'all signed him. You know what I'm saying? Like the Jimmy that we know now, how we perceive Jimmy, that was not the Jimmy Butler that came into Miami. If y'all remember how Jimmy was viewed after he left Philly, after he left Minnesota, and after he left Chicago, that guy was viewed as a locker room cancer. And if anything, Miami was scrutinized for signing Jimmy Butler.
Underperformed in his last 2 healthy playoffs. The only rock they've had to me outside of Jimmy Butler has been Bam. So now next year, you're basically going to have the exact same core, because a lot of these guys, they're still under contract. This year, they traded for Terry Rozier, and I always questioned the fit because he never really felt quite like Heat culture, especially coming out of Charlotte. But I said, okay, they're aggressive. It really didn't work out. He was injured and he hasn't really played well. He's owed a lot of money next year. Next season, and I feel like I say this every single year, Miami has the 4th highest payroll in the league, and they still feel like they lack talent. If you look at the other top 4, top 5 teams as far as payrolls next year, even if they are a shit show, they're at least a top-heavy team with 2 to 3-ish stars on max deals.
I think Miami has enough assets to actually go for one of these stars. Whether that's D. Mitch, I don't think Joel Embiid is going to be ready this offseason or available this offseason. But like a D. Mitch or even a KD if he goes on the market, I do think the Miami Heat have some assets that they can throw at these motherfuckers, specifically Tyler Hero and Jaime Jaquez. And I think it'd be worth it for them. They got to pull the trigger, dog. Because in my opinion, the Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo led, unless you have so much confidence in the fact that, if you weren't injured this season, like, you know what I'm saying, we would have been a top seed in the NBA Finals. Which y'all do have the track record to have that blind faith that, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know.
Miami just doesn't feel like that. Talent is still what they lack, yet their salary cap is one of a team with a bunch of talent. Now, in 2024, going on 2025, now with Jimmy Butler, now that you haven't maximized him, you're kind of in a dilemma. What do you do with him now? He's about to be 35 with basically 1 year left on his deal. As great as he is, and I love Jimmy, unless you really want to set your franchise back, I don't know if you can extend him to another long-term deal that will end when he's like 38, 39. I'm sorry, it's business, and Jimmy hasn't been the most healthy. Unfortunately, it feels like whatever was to come from the Jimmy Miami Heat era, y'all didn't maximize, and now in 2024, it peaked. Definitely won a lot of games, made 2 finals, I believe 3 conference finals off of grit, culture, Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley, Jimmy, all that. But it just feels like you squeezed all the juice left out of that lemon. The Philadelphia 76ers, they're unfortunately another team that's made terrible moves over the years, and it possibly jeopardized their stars window. Joel Embiid is now 30. Joel Embiid's 30 feels like 35. This man's body, his face, his legs, his knees, his back, it's just been through it. Even coming into the league, I've never even seen this man healthy for a full playoff run. And
I have this theory that Joel Embiid flops the way that he flops because he legitimately cannot move anymore. Like, for real, if you watch Joel Embiid play, when he leans into motherfuckers trying to draw into fouls, I truly, and the reason why he foul baits so much, I truly think his body is so damaged that it is in his body's best interest to not have a back and forth game, to slow the game down as much as possible, to go to the line for 2 points instead of getting a bucket and running down the court. Like Joel Embiid is fucked up, bro.
That's unfortunate. With that being said, a lot of the financial moves, even some of the draft moves Philly made, it completely destroyed this prime window of Joel Embiid. Now, not to absolve Joel Embiid for terrible, and I mean terrible performances in the playoffs. Let's not get it twisted.
Damn, he was crying on Marc Gasol's. I've never seen that angle. I'm just...
Year versus Boston,
Whoa.
I watched the MVP get locked up in pivotal moments versus Al Horford. I didn't see those statement games like I just seen from Jokic in game 4 and 5. This man picked game 7 last year versus Boston to have his worst game of his whole season. So Joel Embiid, he deserves his share too. But some of their draft moves and who they decided to pay over the years, it really destroyed what looked like it possibly could have been special 5 years ago. I'm not killing them for this move.
I think the formula for the Sixers was 2019. I think relying on Joel Embiid to be a hard carry one, and the gap between Joel Embiid and the next guy being the gap that it is between him and Tyrese Maxey is just too big. But I feel like in 2019, there was this really good balance of, if Joel Embiid is even hurt, if Joel Embiid is having one of those games where he's going 5 of 18, there's a guy like Jimmy Butler to truly step the fuck up and dominate the game. There's a guy like Ben Simmons who can, at that time, who can impact the game in so many ways and dominate in his own right. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like if they can get back into that by possibly, bringing back Jimmy Butler, fuck it. I don't think they can do that. By bringing in a Paul George, you know what I'm saying? Along with Tyrese Maxey. I do think that's a better formula than what they got right now, but I would also be cautious with that because Paul George is not the healthiest guy as well. The idea that Joel Embiid just needs to hard carry a team is over. And I understand they found him some really good guards these last couple of seasons to play with. So it's not like he doesn't have help whatsoever. But and Nick Nurse is capable of this, so I need him to tee up in this department. He needs to come up with a system as well that's not reliant on Joel Embiid dropping 35. There needs to be an offensive system better than what they got right now as well.
Because literally anybody would have done it in that moment. But they basically signed Ben Simmons to the contract of death. He got that money and basically quit basketball. They traded him for another player that damn near put them through the exact same thing. Then that Tobias Harris contract. Bro, I'm sorry, but it ended so damn
Tobias Harris
poorly.
over me?
This playoffs, and this stat absolutely blew my
Yeah.
mind. You know how they have that stat per 36 minutes to see exactly what pace a player is actually on?
Yep.
Well, scratch that. Let's look at players that actually played 36 minutes in these playoffs. Out of every player that averaged 36 minutes, like Tobias Harris, Tobias is the only player that averaged single digits. This man is making $40 million a year. Next year, the only
Oh,
good
let me look at that list again. Let me look at that list again, bro. Hold on.
player that averaged single
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Now, mind you, Drew's in there as well. But Drew provides you way more value outside of just scoring. Max Strus is a role player, not getting paid Tobias Harris money. And I don't think any of these dudes out here too are getting paid Tobias Harris money. And they're already averaging a significant amount more points.
This man is making $40 million a year.
Aside from maybe Trey
Next
Murphy,
year,
but
the
damn.
only good part is all the bad contracts are basically done. The only contract they really have left is Joel Embiid. But that basically means you kind of have to have the perfect offseason. And if you don't, how much time do you even have left with Joel Embiid? Do you want to reboot? That's the question they have to answer. The New Orleans
And this is what I'm saying too with the continuity argument is, okay, let's just say they have a really good offseason as well. Teams need time to, again, build chemistry and develop into the teams that they need to be. This idea that you're just going to bring in motherfuckers in one off season and you're just going to win a championship year one, that is literally outside of 2019 and 2020. So we'll say that. Those are really good examples. Like, that's just not, it's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen.
Pelicans, a team that I've always liked, but they have to 100% blow this big three up. This experiment from the jump is quickly turned into a massive disappointment. One of the deepest teams in the league with two-way young wings that I like. I like Willie Green, but their top three guys, let's be honest, they're all very unreliable. Zion Williamson, I'm sorry, he's a very talented player, but the facts are the facts. He can't stay healthy and he's never consistently in the best shape. His team, since he's been there, they played 10 playoff games. He's never been a part of one. It's been 5 years. I'm sorry. He's proven he cannot be your best player because he's simply not there enough. Brandon Ingram, we don't talk about him enough because Zion's typically hurt and he gets the headlines for it because of his weight, but he is too. In his last 3 years, he's played 55 games, 45 games, and this year 64 games.
Damn.
I respect him for coming back this year just in time for the playoffs. But I talked about Tobias Harris and how he was probably the worst player in the playoffs that actually played. Brandon Ingram was a close second.
Oh, wow.
Out of every player
Was
that
he?
shot as many times
Oh,
as
damn.
Brandon
I
Ingram
didn't
did
know
in the
that.
playoffs this year, he was by far the most inefficient. Again, probably wasn't healthy, but that's why I said this big three is not really reliable. This team, and it feels tough to say this because they're extremely deep and they just had their second best record literally in their franchise's history, but they don't feel like they have that top alpha reliable guy. You want it to be Zion, you drafted him to be that, but he's simply not there.
I wouldn't quit on Zion just because maybe this is just me having still blind faith in Zion. I really do think having the healthiest season by far in his career is just a step in the right direction. And the injury that he had, I understand it was non-contact, but I would just give it another year. That's me, because he showed a lot of promise this year, man. He was headed in the right direction. But if next year he has another 50-game season, or even if he plays 65, if he has a season missing another 17, 18 games, and then he's not there for the playoffs, yeah, you're in Kawhi territory for me. You're in Kawhi territory for me, buddy. I'm sorry.
Enough, and it's tough. And lastly, and it's tough for me because this is my era, but we officially hit that crossroad in eras. Now it's finally up for the old heads and on to the young generation to carry the rest of the 2020s. The sole old vet star now left in the playoffs is Kyrie Irving. That's crazy. I remember when Kyrie was the young guy beside LeBron. But all of my childhood heroes, they went home early this year. Steph, he couldn't even get in the playoffs. LeBron, he's out in the first round. Kevin Durant, he tried another super team and got bounced by a 22-year-old. Kawhi, he can't even get on the court anymore in
I feel like some of these things too is like, I understand the goal is to win a championship, but I feel like the marker for success for some of these franchises, some of these franchises got to be bigger than just did they win a championship or not. Like, I'm looking back at the 2010s. Was the Paul George, Roy Hibbert, Lance Stevenson era a failure if you really look back at it? Was it really a failure just because they didn't win a chip? I don't think so. I think that was a great era of Pacers basketball, and we just accept that for what it was. I think even the Lob City Clippers were there years where they probably should have won a championship. Absolutely. But how that team, how that core made the LA Clippers a serious team in the league at the very least, to the point where that carried over to where we're at right now, I think that's huge for the LA Clippers. I think that's huge. The Carmelo Anthony New York Knicks. All of Knicks fans love the Melo Knicks era. They will never forget that era. Even with the JB Knicks that we got right now. Hell, even the JB Knicks right now. Is this team winning a championship the marker for the JB Knicks era being a failure? I just don't think so. And when you look at this conversation about there being 30 teams in the league, only one team wins a championship every single year, and all the luck involved that goes around into winning a championship, I just feel like we got to be a little bit more forgiving when it comes to calling franchises and their eras a success or not. I think this last era of the Clippers, that's 50-50. I can't lie. But again, the Knicks right now, I don't think they need to win a championship for this to be considered a successful era. Let me look back at these other teams as well. Let me see. Minnesota's a little bit different because Anthony Edwards is extremely young, so I would hope at least some point. Well, I'll actually go there. I'm going to give it a stack. If in 4 or 5 years, the Minnesota Timberwolves become perennial championship contenders, maybe they even make it to the finals once, and they just don't win, I would still consider this era of Minnesota Timberwolves basketball a success. This is a team that's been a laughing stock in NBA history outside of the KG era. And even in that era, it was KG hard carrying, and I don't think they were ever truly taken seriously to the point where people really thought they could beat the Lakers or the Spurs. Well, they might have actually beaten the Spurs. I don't know. But they were a Cinderella run ass story if they would have won a championship. But if these Timberwolves end up being essentially the LA Clippers with a finals appearance, given the context of their franchise, I don't think that's a failure. To me.
April, Paul George, he's home doing podcasts. Jimmy Butler, he's home telling us what he would have done. It's officially out with the late 2000s, early 2010s era and on to the late 2010s, early 2020s era. Like, it's here now. If you guys made it this far, don't just leave the video, like the video, and comment what's been the most surprising thing of the playoffs so far. To me,
hey, listen, man, I'm gonna leave a like. Shout out to Swish Out for the video. Swish Out's video will be in the description down below. And with that being said, probably catch y'all tomorrow. Peace.